And we welcome you to the Marina Variety Store Restaurant located at 17 Lockwood Drive here in downtown Charleston for tonight's Coaches Show. The head coach, Brent Thompson, of the Citadel Bulldogs, coming off a big victory this past week against Western Carolina. We'll talk about that. Get ready for the game coming up Saturday. Homecoming for the Bulldogs against Sanford, and a whole lot more with you until 8 o'clock here from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant on ESPN Radio. Luke Morrow alongside the head coach. Coach, how are you tonight?
Well, a lot better than I was last week, Luke. Thank you, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a big win there on the road against Western Carolina, 38-24, the comeback in the second half with 28 unanswered points in that second half. So, obviously, a good win for you guys on Saturday. Yeah, we felt good.
We felt like we finally finished a football game, and that's what I've been talking about for the last 3 or 4 weeks was just making sure that we finish a game. We've got spurts. We've got spurts where we play really well, but really is what it comes down to is just kind of finishing off the game like we did last weekend.
And talk about finishing off the game in that second half. You know, outscored Western Carolina 28-0. You pitched a shutout. You had a couple of block punts in that half specifically. Handful of touchdowns. Was that the best 30 minutes of football? Maybe not only this year, but how would that stack up in terms of 30 minutes of football during your time here?
It's probably the best 30 minutes of overall football. Mm-hmm. Offense, defense, special teams. Somebody came through with a big play, whether it was Ron Peterkin, guys that really hadn't made a whole lot of plays throughout the year. Ron Peterkin pokes the ball out there, and we get the ball, and he's going in to score. I mean, that was a huge turning point. That was going to cut the lead to 7 points right there. And then you got Bradley Carter. He's a walk-on. He's a 4-year walk-on for us. Well, he spent 3 years on the scout team with us. Had his moment in the sun on the one blocked punt right there to help us right there. So those are great stories throughout. Sean Thomas Faulkner with another one. I mean, ST's been a steady on those special teams. He gets another one. Dante Smith, that's his first touchdown of the year. He recovers the kick in the end zone. So Brandon Rainey, he gets on the board a couple of times. Clay Harris gets on the board a couple of times. Those guys right there, they're starting to make an impact for us, and you can see it's late in the year, and this time in the year the team is either going to continue to rise and get better like I thought we did and pull a little bit of momentum at the end of the year, or you're going to start to tank it. And that was where I think we went wrong last year. We started to tank it at the end of the year. Very disappointed with it. But with this group, I thought they rebounded really well.
Yeah, I got that win Saturday against Western Carolina. Homecoming coming up this upcoming Saturday here at home against Sanford. Another big game for the Bulldogs. You touched on all the big plays in that second half, so what exactly changed? The team was trailing at halftime. You come out, you put together that great 30 minutes, outscore them 28-0 to get the victory. Is there anything you can pinpoint for the reason for the success?
Well, you take away about 5 or 6 plays in the first half, and you didn't play that bad. We had the turnover on offense. We had the turnover for 6 points, which, when you got a different quarterback in there, not used to getting tackled. The first time he had gotten tackled in over a year, and the ball comes out, it flops out, it goes to the next guy, and the next guy returns it. On their first drive, we had an opportunity to pick that ball off. It goes right through Sean Thomas's hands, and it lands in their hands on the 1-yard line. But the best thing about that was the fact that we held them to a field goal there. And we got them all the way to the 1-yard line, and it's just what we were saying. It's just hold them to field goals and we'll be okay. So things weren't as bad as they seemed, even though they didn't go very well for us. We were down 14 points. We went in at halftime, and I sat there and I collected myself, and I said, look, we're really not playing that bad. We've got plenty of things. We didn't make a whole lot of adjustments on offense other than let's just do these things a little bit better. Let's take care of the football. Let's methodically move the ball down the field. Defensively, it was, hey, we didn't fit the ball right, and it got out for a 70-yard run right there. Okay. That's the big play that we really needed to avoid. But other than that, we were getting the job done on defense, and we had gotten the first drive stop. And other than that, we just went in at halftime, and I walked over to the defense, and I said, look, continue to do what you're doing. Just do it a little bit better. Offensively, I said there's nothing that they can't take away from us that we're not taking away from ourselves. Settle down and play football the Citadel way, and things are going to go your way. And that's exactly what happened in the second half. Just a couple things went your way, and next thing you know is you had to lead.
And statistically, this team has been more of a second-half team really over the past 2 years. In the second half of games, you're outscoring opponents by over 60 points since the start of last season. And from the first half to the second half, there's actually a point differential of about 185 over the past 2 seasons. So, what can you pinpoint what it's been for this team that it seems like not just this past Saturday, but each week they come out with more energy in the second half than the other team, and you always seem to play better in the second half than the opposition.
Well, on defense we've had a tendency to kind of can we play with these guys, settle in, what's their game plan? Once we figure out their game plan on defense, I think we settle in and we do a nice job. There's no doubt. Offensively, it's this kind of an offense, right? We are going to lean and wear on on you. And we're also making adjustments. We make adjustments all throughout the drive. Is what are they doing? Is sometimes they're very, very subtle, just blocking scheme adjustments. Sometimes they're play call adjustments. But really, it's you're constantly trying to react to what they're doing. All right, they're going to do this. We need to take this away from them. So it's a credit to both staffs, the defensive staff and the offensive staff, for just trying to stay one step ahead. And that's really the sign of a good staff, is second half adjustments. But if we can sustain, and the other thing is we probably need to attack more in the first half. And similar to what you saw against VMI, offensively come out and just take a couple shots down the field. Similar to what you saw against Furman, take a couple shots down the field and kind of loosen the defense up a little bit. And then on the defensive side, all we got to do is just, you'd love to be able to go 3 and out. We hadn't been able to go 3 and out very much in the first drive.
Talking about that second half with Western Carolina, incredibly impressive 30 minutes of football, but specifically on the defensive side of things, because you didn't allow any points and you went up against one of the top scoring offenses in the conference. And as we've discussed all season long, this is a young defense, guys that are still getting used to playing at this level, and they seem to have gotten better each and every week, and then that culminated in that second half Saturday. So I'm sure from a defensive side of things, makes you proud to see this group go out there and play like that. What
you saw in the second half was we took away his first read. If you take away his first read, he'll start to get a little bit antsy back there. Then you got to cage him and contain him a little bit, and that's the second thing that I thought we did well, that we've done better than we've done to some past quarterbacks, the Thompson game, for an example. We kind of kept him inside of the box a little bit, and we made him kind of rush. We took away all the little things. We had our spy on him to make sure that wherever he went, we actually had a body on him. We didn't let him get out of the box too much. And if you can do that against him, I think that's a good game plan for us. Take away the first read and then kind of get him antsy in there a little bit, and then make sure that you got somebody assigned to him. And then, of course, the sacks, the defensive line did a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. 5 sacks in the game for the Bulldogs. And when you look at that performance, Tyree Adams was a guy who, coming into that game, was third in the conference in rushing from the quarterback position. He had set already as a junior the program record for touchdown passes, and he was described to me prior to the game as kind of a smaller Cam Newton. And you did a great job on him in the second half. And really that entire game, he didn't put up the numbers that he had been putting up so far this season.
You got a glimpse of him in the first half. He took that zone. He took that one zone play. And we had him hemmed in. We did a great job doing exactly what we wanted to do, and that was puncture the offensive line. We punctured the offensive line. And if he didn't just hit a seam, and he can hit a seam like no other quarterback I've seen, he can get one step in the ground and then get vertical as quickly as anybody else. And then when you get him in the open field, there's a good chance you're overrunning him.
Let's talk about the block punts. 2 block punts in the second half that led to one led immediately to a touchdown on the block, and the other one set you up for a Clay Harris touchdown there in the second half. Yeah, Ian Berryman has been an all-conference punter all 3 years there. This year as a senior, preseason all-conference punter. In his career, only has had 4 punts blocked, and they've all been against you guys. 2 last year, 2 this year. You don't have to worry about facing him again. So can you reveal the secret, why you have this guy figured out?
Well, I tell you what, is 2 different schemes, too, because they were a shield punt, more of a shield punt last year. And last year's seam plan was just to go right at the seam, go and try to hit it. And Coach Gunner had a pretty good feel for where he was kicking it behind. And all we were trying to do was just push the shield back into it, and we were able to get that twice last year. This year was completely different. It was completely schemed up. Coach did a great job of making sure that he knew exactly where people were going to fit. And believe it or not, Sean Thomas Faulkner blocked about, I would say, more than a dozen kicks against us last year on the scout team, and he was just a scout team guy for us last year. So we knew that he had a knack for finding a seam and getting in there. So each week, Coach Gunners found a way to try to get him open and try to get as many blocked as we possibly could. And then so they had a little bit of a different scheme for us. We thought we were going to get one guy free, and it ended up being Bradley Carter that got free on the one punt. And it's just completely effort on his part. He found a seam in there, and they left him wide open. They blocked Sean Thomas, but they didn't get him.
And those blocked punts, I mean, we've already seen a handful from the Bulldogs so far this year. Those have to be some of those huge momentum plays that when those happen, I mean, it changes everything for you guys on the sideline, it seems.
Absolutely. Whether it's a field goal or whether it's a punt, anytime that you can block a kick, it's going to change the momentum of the game. And when you're giving the ball to the offense on the 20-yard line, or you're scoring 7 points, that's key to a game. That's hard to recover from. That's what we always say. The punt team can get you beat. The punt and the kickoff team can get you beat if you don't watch out.
You already mentioned Bradley Carter, who is playing in just his 6th career game, a couple of sacks, block punt. People were asking, where did this guy come from? So what is his story, and how impressed were you with his performance?
Like I said, he's a 4-year senior scout team player for us, and worked his butt off. And I told the story on Sunday, as I can remember, about a year or two ago, maybe it was about 2 years ago, he came into my office and was about ready to quit football altogether. And I was very disappointed because he's such a great scout team player for us, kind of ran the scout team for many of those years. And we had such an amount of respect for anybody that can go out there and run a scout team, especially against our offense. I mean, it's brutal at times out there. You're just constantly, attacking the run game, and he did it with such a great pizzazz every time. I was happy to see him have some success.
Yeah, he had a big game Saturday, as did the Bulldogs as a whole, with the 38-24 win at Western Carolina, and now getting ready for Samford here back at home Saturday with homecoming this weekend here at Johnson Haygood Stadium. You can participate if you're listening at home or watching online by sending your questions on Twitter using the hashtag AskCoachThompson, and we'll get those in throughout the hour. We'll later on in the show preview that game Saturday, and when we come back, we'll continue to recap the win from this past Saturday for the Citadel. We're here until 8 at the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant. It's the Coaches Show, the head coach Brent Thompson, right here on ESPN Radio 94.7 FM and 910 AM. All right.
Hey, Bulldog fans, I'm Danielle Hensley, and this is your Bulldog Breakdown. Basketball tipped off their season at Clemson University on Tuesday, where the Dogs fell 100-80 to the Tigers. 4 Bulldogs finished the game in double figures, led by Lou Stallworth with 15 points. Next week, they will host Mid-Atlantic Christian on Monday for the home opener at 7 p.m. The Bulldog football team is coming off of a 38-24 win against Western Carolina. The Dogs rallied from a double-digit halftime deficit with the help of a strong defensive performance, including 2 blocked punts and 3 turnovers. This week, they will host Samford for homecoming, kickoff set for 2 p.m. The Citadel volleyball team is now 10-16 after picking up 2 losses over the weekend against Samford and Chattanooga. They will look to bounce back as they start their last week of regular season play. The Dogs will be at Mercer on Wednesday for a 6 p.m. start and will serve at 6 p.m. on Friday at ETSU. They will then host Florida A&M on Saturday at 7 p.m. The wrestling team finished the first match of their season at the Hokie Open on Sunday. Sophomore Martin Duane was the top finisher for the Bulldogs, taking third in the 184 freshman-sophomore division after dropping only 1 match. And finally, this Saturday, the mixed rifle team will head to North Georgia to face off against the Nighthawks at 8 a.m. I'm Danielle Hensley, and that was your Bulldog Breakdown. For all things Citadel Athletics, follow Citadel Sports. And have a great week, and go Dogs!
The great thing about an old truck is you can treat it like an old truck, which is exactly why you got a truck in the first place. It's not old, it's broken in. So keep it running longer, stronger, with quality parts and a whole lot of Napa know-how. That's not gonna buff out.
TD Bank's new intern, Bart, is one of those robots from another bank. We're training him to bank human. Bart, why are you winding the clock back?
The clock stated 11:35 p.m., but they are still working.
The clock is fine. Our live customer service is available all night, and all day for that matter. He's learning.
At TD Bank, we do things differently.
Hello?
Like live customer service.
Hello?
24/7. Don't just bank. Bank human.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
Buying a home is a big financial decision, so you need a strong team working on your mortgage. That team is at...
Where is your home? Carol and I were members of the surf club for like 10 years, 15, 12 years.
Back on the Coach's Show here at the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston, right down the road from the Citadel. Talking with the head coach, Brent Thompson, of the Bulldogs about the win this past Saturday on the road, 38-24 against Western Carolina. 28 unanswered points in the second half, third win of the year, all on the road. And, Coach, it seems like every time that we've been sitting here after a win, after that first one against Mercer, you had told us on the radio at the time it ranked as one of your best, and you followed it up here on the Coach's Show and said maybe you'd put it maybe second during your time here. Then you get the win against VMI, where the trophy returns here to Charleston, 12th straight win, and we were saying that was a big win. Now you get this win against Western Carolina, and we know how you played in the second half with the comeback win and great 30 minutes to finish out that game. So where does Saturday's win rank on your list and with all these wins this year?
That would probably be somewhere behind the Sanford win from the 2016 year. So probably around third would be that Mercer, that Sanford win, and then that one. Certainly was a good win, as if we could have played a little bit better in the first half, a little bit better story. But as a coach, you're always worried about the mistakes that you made, and you're always impressing upon your players that you need to play 4 quarters of football, not just 2. And in that Sanford game, I thought we played a good solid 4 quarters that day. And in this day, is we only played about two solid quarters of football, and really the game could have been a lot worse if we really did play 4 quarters of football.
And the win against Western Carolina, you did it with the change at the quarterback position. You were missing some guys in the backfield, so does that make it an even more impressive win from a coaching standpoint that you had different guys step in and you played well enough to get a win on the road? Well,
I'll tell you what it was. It was good to see those young guys play football. They were hungry young players out there. Everywhere from the quarterback to the B-back to all the A-backs back there. They were just wanted. They loved to be out there. You're watching the Kim out there, and we made our fair share of mistakes at those positions, but they made up for it with the way that they played the game. I thought they played a physical game out there. I thought they tried their best, and even though they made some mistakes, they were going out there full speed.
First ever start for Brandon Rainey at the quarterback position. It results in a win for the sophomore. What did you think overall of his performance?
Everything that we asked him to do, I thought he did very well. In order for us to progress and get better, we're going to have to ask him to do a lot more. That game plan was kind of built to, the calls where everything was built for to suit him, but it's not always going to be that way. We're going to have to do things that are a little bit out of his comfort range at times.
Yeah, you mentioned that 71 run plays, only the one official pass attempt, and of the 71 runs, I believe only 4 went to A-backs, so a lot of fullbacks and then Brandon Rainey himself.
And that was the way the day was going to go anyway. We kind of had a good feeling for that. It was going to have to be a B-back quarterback day for us, no matter who was in there, no matter what we were doing. We were going to have to power the ball down and inside for a lot of reasons. One is it's part of ball control, right? We want to make sure that, hey, if we're going to maintain possession of the football, we need to get 4 and 5 yards and 6 yards, and I think we averaged about 6 yards a play. So we need to continue to do that and just kind of keep the ball safe and just run some of our base plays, which is all we really did. Was we ran fairly base schemes that day.
He was an all-conference freshman last year at the B-back position. Now gets a win as a quarterback in his first start. I mean, how challenging is that to go back and forth like that between those positions?
Well, especially when you've never played B-back before. He was a quarterback coming out of high school. We had just gotten into a pinch and needed him. But the one thing about Brandon is he's going to do whatever you ask him to do. He's going to put everything that he's got into doing it, and he's just a tough football player, and that's what you love about him. No matter where he plays, we're going to find a spot, and those are what we need to continue to keep on recruiting is just guys that are good, solid football players that we can put in spots where we need them.
And it seems like, he ran like a fullback the other day as a quarterback, a real hard runner.
Which I think is what benefited us the most. His year playing fullback, first of all, figured out what it was like to take a hit. Second of all, what it's like to just grind out and get yards there when there's no yards to be had. That's all the B-back position is all about. And running with a little bit of forward lean.
Yeah.
He just got to learn to take a little bit better care of the football and we'll be fine.
You said in your press conference he'll be the starting quarterback Saturday against Samford. What went into that decision to keep him out there Saturday?
Well, he did a good enough job. I thought he did everything that we asked him to do, and he's going to be able to run the offense.
And a big game Saturday against Sanford at 2 o'clock. You know, when he did hand it off, it was, as we mentioned, typically to the fullback with Clay Harrison. He had a career day as a freshman, career high in amount of rushing attempts, yards, went over 100 yards, had a couple more touchdowns. What did you like from Clay on Saturday?
Well, the big thing from Clay was we just adjusted his track a little bit. That was one of our halftime adjustments was, hey, this is where this is hitting you. I see what you're seeing to the backside there, but if we keep this thing to the front side, I think, and he scored on 2 dive plays that both hit out the front side where he was trying to cut those back in the early half. So very coachable, hits the hole extremely hard, and he's got a good feel for it. He's got great feet.
I don't know if you can describe it, but how much has he improved from when he first came into the program to now where he is about midway through his freshman year?
Well, he's always a talented player. There's no doubt about that. But the one thing that he was missing was learning how to block. The one thing that he's been able to do was figure out how to block and figure out that he needs to block. A lot of times in high school when you're just getting the ball, you've probably done some pass pro and that's about it. They've just asked you to run the football. Well, we're going to ask him to do a lot more, and he's done that, and he's accepted that role, and he's done a great job with it.
Raleigh Webb, only that one pass attempt, so Raleigh Webb wasn't involved in the passing game, but he had that big end around that essentially put the game away, put you up 14 in the fourth quarter, 59-yard touchdown run. Just take us through that play and why it worked out so well.
Well, we'd been sitting on it, and been sitting on waiting to call it, waiting for the perfect time to call it. And once you get into a certain range, you start to look at things, and we really hadn't used. But I tell you what he did do away from the play or not getting the football. Raleigh did a great job of blocking, and Raleigh and Brandon are tight. And I sensed it from Raleigh that he was excited that Brandon was out there playing, and he was doing a great job on those outside linebackers, which the outside linebackers for Western had all the tackles previous to our game, so I thought he did a good job of blocking those guys for most of the day. But we noticed that Brandon was starting to cramp, and we didn't want to take him out of the game. We still wanted him to be able to operate in there, but I couldn't have him run around too much, and we weren't going to put the ball in the air at that time in the game. We were up by 7. We were in a third and long situation. We had set up the play all day long. I had been sitting on it in my back pocket and just thinking about it, and pulled it out. And it's one of those things is you just hope this thing works, because it's either a big gain or it's a big loss for that, and it ended up being a big gain. But the one thing that was most impressive is I thought the thing was going to get tackled. Prince Howard Whitaker comes out of nowhere and makes a block on the corner that really springs it. And once Raleigh gets in the open field, it's going to be tough to catch him.
Yeah, he was gone. As a play caller, almost kind of like the Philly special, when you call something like that and it works perfectly, I mean, that must.
Oh, it feels great, right? and everybody says, what a great play call, right? I mean, but I've been on the opposite end of those play calls, right? What a terrible call, and I'm the first one to admit, I was like, golly, that was a terrible call, huh? But, that's the, sometimes you got to go with your gut. You got to go with your gut feeling on those.
Yeah, and it certainly worked out with the Raleigh Webb touchdown Sunday, longest run of his career from the receiver position. I know we've already kind of touched on it, but just your overall thoughts on some of the younger guys that we saw in the backfield get more of an opportunity Saturday.
Well, first of all, Nakim, he had played against VMI, played against Furman, but he started and played, and he didn't come out and take too many reps off against Western Carolina. What he did was phenomenal. I mean, he just went out there and played tough, solid football. And I was most impressed with the way he played. Full speed, all effort. Didn't get the ball a lot, but he was out there blocking, and he was doing everything that he possibly could. Dante was another one. I mean, Dante really has been a tremendous asset to us. First time really playing for him as a full-time starter with Grant being down, and then Keontae not being in there. That was put a lot of stress and pressure on him. And then Sam Llewellyn. We've been sitting on Sam for about 7 or 8 weeks, and he's progressed to the point where he's become very functional. And for Sam, it's been more about just the will and the want and the desire to be out there. Is once he realized that his time was up, he worked very, very hard last week. When Drakeford went out, he promised me that he was going to be ready to go. Like I said, all of them had made their fair share of mistakes, but they all played hard.
Was Sam playing at A-back on Saturday?
Yeah, Sam played. He got some rotation in at A-back. Had a couple blocks out there, had about 2 or 3 carries.
Is that the position? Because he was listed on the roster as a B-back. Has he been getting work at
B-back? We
B-back?
moved him to B-back, and he had been out for most of camp, so he didn't get a whole lot of camp reps at B-back. So we had Amike, and we'd gotten a lot of reps there. He's a true freshman who has played a little bit and played a little bit last week. And then, of course, we had Clay in there, true freshman as well, that played and has been playing. So he kind of got caught behind behind with a little bit of an injury throughout camp. So I said, why don't you come on over with me with A-back, help us out at A-back, and just kind of fill in some spots. And I told him, I said, look, we're going to need you about week 5 or 6, but in the meantime, you need to progressively get better. And when Drakeford went down and Rod went down, I said, this is the time that we're going to start to need you, so you got to start to buckle down. You're no longer going to be a freshman.
And that's as we've already said, must be good to see not only get the win, but these guys that are playing a larger role and these younger players getting this experience. And then on top of it all, you come out with a nice victory as well.
Playing with confidence, no doubt.
So the Bulldogs get that win at Western Carolina 38-24. When we come back, we'll talk about the upcoming game as they now return home. Homecoming this Saturday against Stanford. Big game in the Southern Conference for both teams involved. And the Bulldogs will try to make it back-to-back wins. Don't forget, you can send in your questions online by using the hashtag AskCoachThompson on Twitter, and we will get to those here in the second half of the show tonight. We're at the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive. Make sure you come check out the restaurant anytime, even when we're not here on Wednesday nights. But come for some great views, great food, great seafood right down the road from the Citadel. When we come back, we'll talk about the game coming up Saturday, discuss homecoming for the Bulldogs against Stanford. It's the Coach's Show with the head coach, Brent Thompson, here on ESPN Radio, 94.7 FM and 910 AM.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Style. Selection. Service. Quality. Value. See what everyone is talking about. Ashley Furniture Home Store.
TD Bank's new intern, Bart, is one of those robots from another bank. We're training him to bank human. Bart, why are you winding the clock back?
The clock stated 11:35 p.m., but they are still working.
The clock is fine. Our live customer service is available all night, and all day for that matter. He's learning.
At TD Bank, we do things differently.
Hello?
Like live customer service.
Hello?
24/7. Don't just bank, bank human.
We build our communities. We earn our success. We, as South Carolinians, work best together. Don't follow your bank into the impersonal world of mergers. Make a change. Visit South Atlantic Bank to talk with local bankers who care about the Low Country. Our local headquarters will be ready next year on Johnny Dodds Boulevard. Until then, stop by our current location. You'll find a community bank with a proven track record of financial success. South Atlantic Bank. People you know and trust.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
I reckon I've been hanging around a while. Now I don't move like I used to, but I still get the job done. So what if I fall down now and then? I get right back up again sooner or later.
What is your garage door saying? A brand new garage door from Overhead Door could be the upgrade your home is asking for. The genuine, the original Overhead Door. Just look for the red ribbon logo.
The corners of a city street, a table in a cafe seat. I got it, I don't miss a beat, oh no. Walking down the avenue, be it gray or be it blue, Live 5 News everywhere I go. You're everywhere, got you everywhere, everywhere I go. Whoa, 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 everywhere I go.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Mark Lee became the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, sacrificing his life for our freedoms and his SEAL teammates. America's Mighty Warriors was born out of Mark's challenge to pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. We honor our troops and Gold Star families by providing programs that assist recovery after injury or loss. Partner with us by making a generous donation. Text MARK to 234-231-9284. America's Mighty Warriors, supporting our troops and the families of the fallen.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
I reckon I've been hanging around a while. Now I don't move like I used to, but I still get the job done. So what if I fall down now and then? I get right back up again sooner or later.
What is your garage door saying? A brand new garage door from Overhead.
Back on the Coaches Show here at the Marina Variety Store and Restaurant located at 17 Lockwood Drive here in downtown Charleston, right down the road from the Citadel. Fun time to be a Citadel sports fan these days with basketball season up and running. The men's team losing last night at Clemson 100-80, but will return home for their home opener Monday night at McAllister Fieldhouse. Monday night, 7 o'clock tip-off there in Charleston. And, of course, homecoming weekend for the football team with Samford coming to town on Saturday. And the Bulldogs will look to get back-to-back wins. Coach, have you had an opportunity to see much of the basketball team here over the past couple of years?
I have. Usually I actually take the girls over and we watch every single home game.
Wow.
It happens during recruiting. It's one of the nice things about living on campus is 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock tip is we can get over there, at least make at least most of the game. Have a good opportunity to watch them. My dad's a big basketball guy. I don't know anything about the sport. Obviously, I'm 5'3". Never played too much about the game, but my dad does. My dad coached it for many years in high school, so he'll explain it to me a little bit as best he can, just like he explains football to me as well. But that's unsolicited as well, but we have a good time though watching it, and the girls like to go there and enjoy probably working out and cheering with the cheerleaders.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, they like to run as much as your football team does.
Well, right? Somebody's got it, right? They got to get going.
Hey, let's talk about the football team with the game coming up Saturday against Samford coming to town. Samford 5-4. They've had a unique season. They won their first game against a non-Division I team, then lost 4 straight. Now they've won 4 in a row. So right now sitting at 5-4. It's really been a tale of two halves so far for them this year. Have you been able to get a read on what exactly which Samford you're going to get on Saturday?
Well, you're going to get a hot team. This is one of those teams where you don't want to get hot. Is when they get hot, we were all shocked when they were down and they were struggling to start the year. The offense was a little bit different. They're back to normal traditional offense right now, but they were shifting and motion, doing some things that they hadn't done in years past. They're more of back to their up-tempo, quick game, getting the ball out of their hands, kind of more what suits them. So that could have something to do with it as well. But, yeah, the big thing is the scary part is they are a hot football team. They're having a lot of confidence. They got a chance to make the playoffs. They can get to 7 wins. I think they've got a chance.
After that losing streak now, as mentioned, 4 straight wins. They're averaging, I think, over 50 points per game in the 4 wins. Have you noticed what the difference was from the first half of their season to the way they've been playing the past month?
Well, it's one of those things. I think once they got a little bit of a shocker against Mercer. The Mercer game for them was a pivotal game for them. I think once they kind of figured things out, moving on, taking another loss there, and then next thing you know is they just kind of found the rhythm. It's like anybody, like we were just talking about, is some teams start to tank at the end of the year, some teams start to rise at the end of the year, and you always want to be one of those teams that are rising at the end of the year.
Yeah, and Samford has gotten hot at the right time. I know they were predicted in the preseason to be one of the best teams in the conference, and then didn't get off to the start they wanted to, but still have a chance to win the conference. When you look at this team and how they match up against the rest of the Southern Conference, you still think they're towards the tops of this conference talent-wise?
Oh, by far, yeah. And they've always had one of the better talent teams in the league. Like I said, it was just a matter of whether they were going to catch it, they were going to catch fire or not, and you hope they didn't, and you hope they didn't do it against you.
Last year against Samford, kind of got punched in the mouth there to start. It was 28-0 in the first quarter. Just take us through that game last year and where things kind of got away.
They got away in about the first 30 seconds of the game. All right, I mean we gave up 2 quick scores. We got down 14 before we blinked, and then we couldn't get out of our own way on offense. We just went back and rewatched the film and penalties. I mean, once we started to self-destruct, we couldn't get out of our own way, and it was we played catch up the rest of the day. Believe it or not, we actually had opportunities to be able to make that a much closer game and kind of methodically move the ball around. We didn't stick the ball in the end zone, and of course, as I've mentioned on this program before, and as I mentioned in all my speaking circuits throughout the spring, was we were awful in the red zone last year, and we were awful whether it was penalties, whether it was turnovers, or whether it was just sticking the ball in the end zone. We shot ourselves in the foot, and that was one thing that we addressed, and we certainly had gotten better this year with it, but we can't have the start that we had last year. We can't have the start we had last year on offense or defense. We've got to do a much better job of taking the punch, right? The old Mike Tyson saying is it's how you react to that punch.
I grew up a Vikings fan. Dennis Green, used to say that he would literally, after tough games, would go out and bury the tape and just forget it. I know you just mentioned rewatching the tape and learning from that game last year, but was that one of those games that is just kind of, bury that tape, let's move on because it was so out of character?
Let me tell you a quick story. You mentioned that right there. I was at Northeastern with Coach Brown, who is the defensive coordinator at Michigan, and I was in charge of the video. I was coaching the running backs, and I had messed up the video exchange that day. It used to be a hard VHS video at the time. It was 2002 season. We were having a great year. We went down and got absolutely we ended up 10-2 that year, but one of our losses was to William and Mary. And on the way back, I had exchanged wrong film, so I didn't have a defensive copy. Well, Coach Brown is a defensive guy, so we walked into I had to go, hey, Coach, I don't have the right film for you. He was not too pleased with me. So instead of outing me in front of the whole team, he did exactly that. He took a game film that was no longer, it wasn't even a game film that we had actually had that year, and threw it against the wall and smashed it into pieces right there and told the team that we weren't going to watch this film. We were going to put this one, we were going to bury this one away. We were going to move on to the next game. So it kind of reminded me of that story right there. But no, we have it on video. We can't destroy our server, unfortunately, anymore, as much as we often try to. So I have to relive that experience every single year, and some of it's motivation. Some of it's motivation for our players. Is Coach Asher also made a comment at the end of the game that I've saved in my phone, and I took a picture of it, and it was we just out-physicaled them on both sides of the football, and it was nothing that he said that was incorrect. It was actually very true, but I saved it to remind myself and to remind our players that they did out-physical us that day. They took our game and played it against us. They jumped up on us pretty quickly, and on defense, I thought they just came at us, and they just kept on coming at us, and we want to learn from those things as best we can. Absolutely.
We'll get back to the Bulldogs in a sec, but since you did bring up Don Brown, it's funny, I was just talking about him earlier this week on the radio show because growing up in Connecticut, my high school algebra teacher played for him at Plymouth State up in New Hampshire.
Played him, yep, when I was at Norwich.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so, it was such a big football guy. We spent more time talking about football in that class than about math, and at least once a week he would talk about Don Brown and how he was the most underrated defensive coach that no one has ever heard of because at that point he hadn't made it to FCS yet. And then now, he's with Michigan, which statistically is one of the best defenses we've seen in college football. So it must have been a real experience to work with him.
Well, not only that, Coach Brown is a Norwich grad too, and so he is a phenomenal defensive guy. And I was working on offense at the time, but working on offense is a different story for him. I mean, the defense is definitely where it's all about. But he had a tremendous team right there, and he did such a good job. And I could see why his players always played extremely hard for him. He ran his own defense. He ran his own defense when he was at Northeastern as well. But he truly is a ball coach. And being a head coach he was great at, but really he just wanted to be a ball coach.
Was Northeastern, is that one of those schools that you have to go for 5 years?
It was, yeah. Yeah, they have what they call it was a internship program essentially where you went for at least one of the trimesters every single year, and so you still had to catch back up, but you would go to a business and you would work for them for about 3 or 4 months.
Would that make it tougher to recruit, or would that
it
help?
Was tough. Yeah, no, it was tough. The weird thing about working at Northeastern was the trimesters didn't start, so we had like NFL players kind of scheduling for the longest time was August and September. We really didn't start our classes until mid-October. So really for about 4 or 5 weeks of the season, you're on an NFL schedule, practice whenever you want, meet whenever you want, until the season started, until the classes started.
My father was recruited to play basketball there, and he said, no, I don't want to go to school for 5 years. And then, a couple of years later, he was, I wish I had an extra year of college. I wish I did go for 5 years.
It's a great school, and it was a great business school, engineering school. It was a good place to work. Unfortunately, they've dropped football, being in downtown Boston, where Boston is a huge NFL, NHL,
right.
The Red Sox. It's that kind of a town. It's a great pro town, not a great college town.
All right, well, let's get back to the Bulldogs after all the Northeastern talk. Playing against Sanford here on Saturday. Looking at the numbers, looking at the roster for Sanford, of course, led by that quarterback, Devlin Hodges, who has thrown for over 300 yards in all but one game. He's thrown for over 400 yards already 5 times this year. He's the latest test at that position. We've seen some quarterbacks come into town or in this conference that really like to sling it around. What makes him so tough?
First of all, he's got all the throws. As I've seen him make sidearm throws, I've seen him make throws on the run, I've seen him, and he puts them right on the money. He's got a great receiver, Kelvin McKnight. The rest of them are really good receivers that are great possession guys. He's got such a knack for and a great feel for where it's going to go pre-snap. And that's all coaching. That's all the system. That's the Mike Leach air raid system that Coach Hatcher played in and knows it extremely well and does a great job of coaching. So all the pre-snap stuff, he knows exactly where the ball goes. It's just a matter of whether you can get the ball in the right spot with that, because getting pressure on him is very difficult. He's got 6'7" offensive linemen that really, most of the time, they only rush 2 or 3 on him because they're going to drop so many. So they don't even do a whole lot other than just stand in front of him and make sure that nobody gets near him.
And how often they throw it, he already has 10 interceptions this year. He's got a lot of impressive numbers, a lot of touchdowns, but he does have a handful of interceptions. Are they prone to turnovers because they put it in the air so often?
Well, it's like anything else. Is when you throw the ball 70 or 80 times a game, 10 turnovers, 10 interceptions is probably nothing.
Mm-hmm. But would that be an opportunity where, as a defense, you have to try to be opportunistic to take advantage of those potential miscues?
You do. The hard thing is trying to bait it. Usually you're baiting a quarterback into something that he thought he saw and didn't really see, and that's when you jump into a lane. I guess Willie's last week was a little bit of an exception, as we just kind of created a little bit of pressure there, and Tyree was just trying to get the ball out of his hands and kind of threw it right to us. But really, we're just really trying to bait a throw or give him a false key or a false look. He's usually pretty good about seeing through it, though.
I know you kind of just touched on it, but for the amount of times that they throw the football, only 9 sacks allowed this year, so they've been able to keep him upright.
Yeah, good quick passing game, and he'll take his shots down the field, but everything is intermediate, quick passing game. He knows where to go pre-snap. It's going to get out of his hands pretty quickly. He's probably one of those that has an initial key, and if it's not there, he's going to go to that key. And they're very big on the offensive line. They're a giant offensive line.
That was what was nice to see this past Saturday. Was numbers-wise, Western Carolina had the biggest offensive line in the conference. They averaged something like 6'4", 320 across the board offensive line-wise. And you guys were able, as we've already touched on, get a lot of pressure in the backfield, 5 sacks. And when you were doing so well in the second half, you were all over their quarterback.
The movements help. If those guys were good at picking up movements, they'd probably be on the defensive side themselves, right? So being that they're offensive linemen, they struggle a little bit with movements. They're just like our offensive line. They struggle with a little bit of movement. As long as you don't move and get out of your own gap, sometimes movement can hurt you like that. Movements against these guys will probably hurt you a little bit more.
They love to throw it, but how is the run game when they do keep the ball on the ground?
It's not what he wants to do. He really wants to be just like me. I mean, I don't want to throw the football, right? He doesn't want to run the football. Let's face it, let's do what we do and let's make it better.
For somebody like you with your philosophy offensively, what do you think, since you mentioned Mike Leach, when Mike Leach will make a comment saying that he doesn't need balance, he can go out there and throw it 80 times?
Well, his comment is great, and I've used it with my own team because his comment even involved the triple option, and what he said was probably one of the best offenses ever invented is the wishbone, because balance to us is not you run to pass. To us it may be right to left, but really it's ball distribution. Mm-hmm. And he said it perfectly, is if I've got 5 guys that are going to all contribute to my offense rather than just the quarterback or just the running back and maybe 1 wide receiver, that's 3. I'm balancing it out amongst 5. If you look at our stat sheet right now, you'll see all of our runs are all over the place, right? We've got 4 or 5 A-backs that all have carries. Mm-hmm. We've got 4 or 5 A-backs that all have quite a bit of yards. We've got 2 or 3 B-backs that are always going to have good yards, and we're going to have a quarterback that has yards. And then every now and then we'll slip in a wide receiver with a reverse and a big play pass.
Talking with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Brent Thompson. When we come back, we'll continue to talk about Saturday's game with Sanford. It's homecoming weekend. We'll wrap up the show tonight, continuing to break down the matchup Saturday for the Bulldogs. Still time to send in your questions using the hashtag AskCoachThompson on Twitter, and we'll get those in already, a couple that have come across. And don't forget, you can come here to the Marina Variety Store Restaurant anytime, located at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston, right down the road from the Citadel. When we come back, we'll continue to break down Saturday's game with Sanford. It's the Coaches Show with the head coach Brent Thompson right here on ESPN Radio 94.7 FM at 9:10 a.m.
We had long deployments in Iraq. Really grateful that USA was able to take care of my family while I was overseas serving.
It was my very first car accident. We were hit from behind. I called USAA, and the first thing they asked was, "Are you okay?" They always thank you for your service, which is nice because as a spouse, you serve too.
We're the Hells, and we're USAA members for life.
See how much you could save with USAA by bundling your auto and home insurance. Get a quote today.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Sorry, Dad.
Sure, you could get him a new car. You could also light a pile of money on fire. Because as long as Mr. It wasn't my fault takes the wheel on occasion, maintaining this car is your best option. So keep it running longer, stronger, with quality parts and a whole lot of Napa know-how.
Dad, where are you going?
These are the moments that move you. Roper St. Francis Orthopedics is South Carolina's leader when it comes to letting you stay in play. Our top-rated program has over 30 specialists across the Lowcountry who are ready to treat all of your moving parts. Call 727-DOCS to keep on moving.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious.
Buying a home is a big financial decision, so you need a strong team working on your mortgage. That team is at South Atlantic Bank.
Decisions are made right here in our community by mortgage professionals who really know the Lowcountry.
South Atlantic Bank offers competitive rates and terms on loans for home purchase or refinance. If you need a mortgage loan, you need the mortgage loan professionals at South Atlantic Bank.
South Atlantic Bank Mortgage Group, providing the keys to home ownership.
Close shave America. Close shave Barbasol. Close shave Barbasol.
Now, try new Barbasol razors.
This is the Pepsi for serious fans and serious eats. This is the Pepsi for Sundays at the ballpark and days off at your favorite pizza joint. Right, Aaron?
Best slice in New York.
Whatever you're craving, this is the Pepsi for you.
What does first alert weather mean? It means you're connected.
To the here, to the now.
To big changes before they happen.
From the everyday to the severe, you need a team that gives you the earliest alert.
When we know, you'll know.
Anywhere you are. Led by the most experienced meteorologist in the Lowcountry, Live 5 is your weather leader.
Not because we want to be first, because your safety comes first.
First Alert Weather, only from Live 5 News.
Pizza with Pepsi. Delicious. Pizza.
The show here with the head coach Brent Thompson, head coach of the Citadel Bulldogs at the Marina Variety Store Restaurant at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston, right down the road from the Citadel. And you can find us here at Wednesdays during the football season and come out in the other days of the week, even when we're not here, for great seafood, great views, great food overall, and certainly good wings here as well for the Marina Variety Store Restaurant as we talk about the game Saturday against Samford. Homecoming for the Bulldogs as the Citadel coming off that win against Western Carolina will try to make it 2 straight victories. As we discussed last segment, Samford, a team that they like to throw the ball around, and we've talked about it throughout this season where, maybe defensively you would prefer a matchup with a team that maybe likes to run a little more. How do you like this matchup against Samford?
Well, it's always challenging for us when you're going against a different style of an offense, and it can be very, very challenging because we don't have as many wide receivers as we typically would to give them a good possible look. We do some live Skelly this week as opposed to most weeks we don't go against each other with Skelly. So this week we did go against just to kind of give them a little bit more of a faster look. Plus the up-tempo. They get a lot of up-tempo, which can be very challenging for us as well because we are slow it down. But conversely, it's probably just as challenging for them to prepare for us as well.
Going up against Sanford on Saturday, and we've talked about the prolific pass attack. But when you look at special teams, it's a young special teams unit. Now, for the Bulldogs, you have a freshman punter who, for my money, is maybe the best that we've seen in the conference. But on their side, they have a young special teams unit, and I've seen that the quarterback even has 10 punts to his name, if I saw that correctly.
Yeah, they have a couple quick kick formations in there. We just watched those today. They are rugby style. They have an Australian punter that does a good job. They're very hard to handle. They're very hard to they roll out a little bit, so you kind of got to gauge where they're going to. Can be a little bit challenging in the block game as well. So we've got to field them, because otherwise, if you don't field those, then they'll roll out pretty good.
Homecoming weekend for the Bulldogs. What does that mean for the football team?
Well, first of all, it means is stay focused. Is starting tomorrow, Thursday, people will start trickling in. Friday, as we usually do, we try to get off campus, and we stay off campus a little bit longer on Friday, do all of our meetings off campus, just about come back for dinner and come back for a walkthrough after the parade has all gone through a little bit, because it can be very hectic with parking on campus and getting the buses back and forth. So we try to delay that as much as possible, keep the distractions to an all-time minimum. It's a great atmosphere. Is the last time that we played Sanford, there was 15,000. It was a beautiful day, and that goes back to that one day I was talking about. It was one of the best experiences, and I even had Coach Hatcher come up after the game and said, this is one of the best game day environments I've ever been a part of. The last time that he was there was with Georgia Southern, and he said it was a poor showing on both teams, and it was a bad attended game. So he was surprised to see what the game day environment was all about, and it's a really cool game day environment, and we're excited.
For both when we had Hall of Fame weekend a couple of weekends back, the last home game, and now homecoming, is there any time, whether it's before the game or afterwards, where the current players are able to interact with maybe some of the past players that have come back?
Very rarely. There are some times that we'll get them in the locker room, we'll get them around, but very rarely have we been able to do that with how much we stay off campus on Fridays, and how much we kind of keep everybody a little bit secluded for all of us. It's very difficult to get things done when you constantly have traffic going in and out.
Yeah, no, I could certainly imagine. Final conference game before the Alabama game, and then Charleston Southern at home. So final conference game, a chance with a win to finish up at 500 in the conference. Overall, what have been your impressions of just the team's performance in conference play this year?
Well, I've had my fair share of disappointment. I really wish we would have played a later conference schedule when I look back at it. As much as we try to talk ourselves into the Wofford game being a great one early on, we'd certainly love to play Wofford last week or this week. We're starting to feel better about where we're going and the direction of our team is going in. Very challenging. We're looking forward to next year because we have a later conference schedule just by the way it works out. So it's starting, how close are we to the best team in the conference? ETSU is probably going to win a fair share of the conference right now. We had an opportunity, right? I mean, we lose to by a field goal there, and had our opportunity to win the game. Chattanooga is going to be second or third somewhere in there, and had a chance to beat those guys. Furman's going to be right in that upper echelon as well. Had a chance to beat those guys as well. So disappointment conference player this year, but not to the point where I think all is lost. I think we can improve a lot from all these performances.
Yeah, those close, tough losses have been well documented this year. Do you have the feeling that if you played some of those games now, there'd be a different result?
Yeah, absolutely. We really need, like anything else, it's just like we were talking about Sanford, is if we could possibly catch fire a little bit and put together back-to-back wins, it's a different team. As I noticed it out there, just going out on Sunday, going out on Tuesday, and going out on Wednesday, is we had some really great up-tempo practices. We had a pretty good win on Saturday against Western. That helps.
You mentioned the back-to-back wins. This would be the first time with back-to-back wins. If you get the W Saturday against Sanford, would be the first home win as well for the Bulldogs this year. Have you been able to put your finger on maybe what has kept that from happening so far this year?
No, one thing we always try to caution ourselves of getting too high after a win as well. As we want to try to feed and create momentum, but yet we still need to drive ourselves every single day and play better.
In terms of playing at home, looking for that first home win this year, and I know you've been asked the question a handful of times over the past 2 weeks, but have you come up with have you seen any difference from the team's performance where you have 3 wins on the road compared to how they've played at home?
I don't know. Some of it may have to do with the pressure that we put on ourselves at home. And going into last week's game, given everything that had gone on prior to last week's game, I told everybody to relax and play football and enjoy it. Is one thing that we really hadn't been doing is enjoying playing football. Yesterday was, last week was a phenomenal day. It was just a beautiful day. It was cool and crisp, and the sun was out. I said, you really want to enjoy this. Time is ticking on all of our careers here. Sit back and enjoy this. As once you take the field and you take the field with each other, this is one of the last opportunities that you're going to have. I think we need to kind of just take a little bit of the stress and the pressure off ourselves, and let's just go out there and play our game.
Well, one of the questions that we did receive online was kind of about changing things at home, but not so much on the field, more of trying to do things differently off the field to change the mojo, if you will, at home, such as switching sidelines. Have you ever thought of doing anything different like that? No, that has not crossed my mind about switching sidelines. It's tough enough to look over there. I don't want to be on that side. You know, sometimes you do have to do stuff like that, change uniform combinations. I don't know. We're going to try to do something this week, I think. Are you superstitious at all? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I have changed probably game hats and I've changed game attire, but I will say that we are 2-0 when I've worn the black pullover VMI and Western. Those games were a little bit cool, so I did wear that. I don't know if I'll break it out this week, but we'll have to see. Yeah, better make sure it's washed for Saturday. Going up against Sanford Saturday, as mentioned, final conference game and second to last home game before Charleston Southern coming up just past Thanksgiving. As we wind down here tonight, first and foremost, what's the health of the team heading into the game Saturday? Better than it was last week. And we still have one or two guys that won't be out there. But other than that, I think we're actually fairly healthy compared to where we were a couple weeks ago. What are some of the keys to Saturday's game to come out of here with a victory against Sanford? Well, we've got to score, and we're going to have to take our shots. We're certainly going to be ball control, but we're going to have to take our shots more than we did last week. They're going to be very, very geared up to take away the run game, and we've got to catch them overplaying something at some point. And whether it's in the first quarter, the second quarter, or the third quarter, we've got to probably take our shots down the field. Defensively, we've got to keep the ball in front of us like we did last week. Hold them to field goals, keep them out of the end zone, do what we can to keep them out of the end zone. Don't get down early. We got down very early. We felt we were down and out a little bit. Even when we did get down early last year, we had a chance to come back and at least make it a one-score game. If we put the two that we had in the red zone, one on the 1-yard line and one I think we got at the 5 or 6 yard line, if we put those two in the end zone, I think we've got a good chance to get that to a 7-point ball game. Where this year we don't want to get that far behind. We just need to keep leaning. Got about 2 minutes left here. You mentioned the red zone struggles a year ago against Sanford and how that has improved this year. At one point, just a couple weeks ago, the Bulldogs, you guys scored on something like 13 straight trips inside the 20. What has been the biggest difference to that turnaround in the red zone? It's a mentality. We worked on it all spring long. We've got a little bit better of a package. We're utilizing a tight end package, which helps us out down there. It kind of can balance the defense out a little bit. And then we've got pretty good fullback play. Both Lorenzo and Clay can stick it in from short distances. They're going to get yards there. Brandon's that kind of a runner too. He's going to find a crease in there. All it is about leaning forward and getting yards when it gets down in the red zone. No coaches show next week because there's a Citadel basketball game that we will be carrying and I will be broadcasting, so no coaches show next week. I know in sports you never want to look ahead, but since we won't be talking here next week, you have Alabama coming up next Saturday. I'll just ask you, recruiting-wise, is it just good to get that exposure being on a nationally televised game playing a team like Alabama regardless of what happens in the game? Well, it'll be interesting. It's an 11 o'clock kick our time, so we got to get our recruits up pretty early to be able to watch the game. Hopefully, we will be able to get our players up early enough to be able to play this one. We're an early rise football team, so we may have a chance here. Well, looking forward to the game Saturday against Sanford before we look ahead to that game next Saturday against Alabama. Lastly, as I always ask you, what would a win mean Saturday against Sanford for the Bulldogs? Once again, it would help us in just moving forward to next year. And certainly a home win would get that off of our back. Certainly, a win against the top-tier team in the league, that'll certainly help us out. And we always want to improve. We want to improve our stature in the league. Well, the Bulldogs will take on Sanford at 2 o'clock on Saturday here in Charleston as part of homecoming weekend. Coach, as always, we appreciate your time, and we wish you the best of luck Saturday. Thanks, Luke. Appreciate it. That's the head coach, Brent Thompson, as we wind down the coaches' show here tonight from the Marina Variety Store Restaurant located at 17 Lockwood Drive in downtown Charleston. Make sure you come and get something to eat here any time of the week. Great views, great seafood located right down the road from the Citadel. So come check out the Marina Variety Store Restaurant, even though we won't be here next Wednesday for the coaches' show because because of men's basketball. Don't forget, home opener for the Citadel men's basketball team will be Monday night, 7 o'clock. Pre-game coverage will begin at 6:30 here in Charleston on 102.1 FM, 92.1 FM, and 1450 AM. And same goes for football on Saturday. We'll take a week off from the coaches show and see if we'll have another one coming up later on after the Alabama game. But the kickoff coming up Saturday, 2 o'clock against Sanford for homecoming. Coverage will begin at noon locally on those same stations, 102.1 FM, 92.1 FM, and 1450 AM. Pre-game coverage at noon, kickoff at 2. The Citadel against Sanford will have all the coverage for you on those stations. And we hope to see you at Johnson Haygood Stadium Saturday for homecoming between the Bulldogs and Sanford. Go Bulldogs!